was that I want to give you that courage to say, no, you can actually, I can show you how you can do it. So that's really one of the things that inspires me to be that person that, to empower and lead people in that sense.
Welcome to another episode of Bigger Than the Hustle podcast. And today's guest is someone who's very much into self-development. Now, Oris works with a social mobility charity and connects young people with companies in the financial sector. His work engages and develops graduates from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. And I think even more interesting that he's one of 9 children. So I know being part of one of 3 children was, a battleground. Being one of 9 would be a huge war, I would say. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce him. Hi, Oris.
Hi.
How are you?
I am good.
Good.
Great. Thanks for having me on board.
No problem at all. So I'm just going to hand over the mic to you. If you could introduce yourself, and then we can go into the conversation from there.
Yeah, cool. I mean, as you said, I'm one of 9, and interestingly, we've never all lived under the same roof at the same time, which is so I was born in Nigeria, and I moved over to the UK when I was 17. So hence why, some of my siblings were born here. So there's a lot of moving around, until like growing up. And as I said, professionally, I work for a social mobility charity, and we help connect, school leavers and undergrads with opportunities within the financial sector, and also work for organizations to advise them on how to engage and attract talent from diverse backgrounds. So
perfect. Yeah. Now, you just said something in your introduction which was really interesting to me. So you came over from Nigeria at 17.
Yeah.
What was the reason that you came to the UK, and what did you notice initially when you first came in, the difference from living in Nigeria to living in the UK?
Yeah. So, my parents, I relocated to join my family because my parents, they moved here when I was about 5. Well, Dad moved over when I was about 3, and then Mum moved over when I was 5. So they actually moved over to create a better life, and the plan was to then eventually bring me and my other siblings who were born in Nigeria over to the UK. So that was the plan, and moved over, I think, August 2000. That's when I moved over. And it was crazy. I remember driving in from the airport on the train and just seeing like what was, now I know this is the normal like bushes and stuff, but I was so scared, thinking would there be snakes in those bushes, because in Nigeria in the summer there's a phase where literally there's snakes everywhere, which is quite unusual. So I was terrified, thinking, oh, would there be snakes in that bush? Then I thought it was just a massive forest, but it was just a normal like thing. That was my first experience. I remember being on the train thinking like, wow, this is so crazy. And when I eventually got to my parents and I saw my siblings for the first time in years, my younger brother, who is 18 months younger than me, I haven't seen him since he moved over from Nigeria as an 18-month-old child. So it's quite a weird experience being in this place. And another quite memorable experience I had was going to my family from Deptford. They live in Deptford, southeast London. Going to Deptford High Street, going to Iceland, thinking like everything was so shiny, and it seemed like I was living on this fancy street. And looking back, thinking, oh, that's just a rundown. But compared to where I came from, everything seems so wonderful. I remember thinking, so you watch stuff in Nigeria, like the neon lights and street lights and everything. I was like, oh. But I didn't realize I was actually in the US, like New York, where they had more of those neon lights. I was expecting that to be in London. I was a bit disappointed, thinking, why am I not seeing these bright lights? Just how naive I was in terms of, so there's the sort of differences I noticed.
Funny, it's funny perspective, isn't it? Like,
exactly.
What you expect and what the reality is of the situation. A lot of the time, especially come from boards, like my dad, he came from India and to Africa through Kenya, and then came to the UK. And he said, everyone said the streets are paved with money, in terms of prosperity, being in the UK. And he said he literally thought that. Turned up and he's like, where's all the money? There's no money. It's only roads, that story, I love any stories of migration, any stories of the first insights into this. So last year I did a little exercise with my dad where I recorded an interview with him about his upbringing and about his life and why he chose to come here and how he found life when he came here. Because I wanted to capture it on video, because I know that when that generation goes, all those stories are going to die with them, and I don't want that to be. I want them to be passed on to my great grandkids and their great grand, to know where the energy they've come from, their grandfather, and what he was and he was about in his words, as opposed to just via my stories. Now, you mentioned that you help younger people into the financial sector, or help them move into that. First of all, the charity that you work for, what kind of projects do you work with? So in terms of the younger people, and why is it the financial sector? What's the importance of that?
Yeah, so the charity was set up 25 years ago. So this year we're making 25 years that it's been in operation. And it was actually set up by people who worked in the financial sector themselves, who founded it as a way, because they noticed that there were other, just social mobility, just wanted to help young people within London to, gain access to, the fancy buildings, the skyscrapers. Because unfortunately back then, the culture is changing now. It was very much about who you know. That's going to the financial sector, which then meant that people who had aspirations, probably just equally as talented, or even more talented, just didn't have the access. So that's why I was set up. And so that's why we focus on the financial sector. And so the type of companies that we work with are some of the household brands that we know of, like say the likes of Deutsche Bank, UBS, and Clifford Chance within the law sector, Alan Overy. So some really big brands. And I suppose over the years, because of that reputation that the brokerage had built and being set up by people from the sector itself, gave that, so it's helped it to be one of the sort of reputable charities within the space. And so the stuff that we do for young people, we run insight sessions where they go into organizations. Before lockdown, they were going to organizations to network and interact with employees, go through office tours to see what happens, what goes on behind the scenes, to give them that insight, and I suppose help them make an informed decision about their future, and also to be inspired. And we also run mentoring programs, so 6 to 8 weeks where a young person is allocated to a professional mentor to just share insights, guide them as they embark on their sort of career journey. And then internship, paid internship for year 13s, usually in the summer. I think that's a fantastic way to actually give young people exposure into what better way like working for UBS, getting paid, and having that on your CV. I think I'm a little bit envious, because I'm thinking to myself, like, these young people who, just normal day to day, and all of a sudden they're working for one of the largest investment banks just out of nowhere. I'm thinking it's great. It's just a great feeling to just see how their future can be altered just like that. And I think for me, just as a privilege to actually be able to serve them in that way. And interestingly, so this is something I'm also learning about life. When I was about 20, I had sort of wrote these ideas and visions that I had. And one of those was actually running programs to connect young people to organizations in the business world, insight days, going behind the scenes to see office tours, to see what goes on, mentoring, internship. Then lo and behold, you're looking at 15 plus years later, I'm thinking, hang on a second, it's just crazy how that's happening, but not how I thought it would happen.
Yeah. And what was it about that interested you, in terms of from even when a younger age to now? What is it within your own energy that you can give to a cause like this?
So what's the question again? Sorry.
So, you said that even when you were younger, this interested you about going behind the scenes and seeing how operations and financial sector works. And now you seem to be working in there, working for a good cause, the charity, to do this for younger people. What is it about, whether it be your upbringing, whether it be your thought processes, that this appeals to you, working for a cause like this?
Yeah, I suppose... So I was one of those kids who, you hear people talk about, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, I want to be that. I didn't have any sort of aspirations or dreams. And I think that's partly because moving here, changing countries at such a young age, but also not really having exposure to a lot of career advice and so on. I didn't have a purpose to say. And and one of the things I wanted actually was just to know who I am and what's my purpose in life. And then that journey of that desire to actually discover my purpose in life took me to a place of becoming even more aware, like a high level of self-consciousness, self-awareness that opened up to things that I never thought were possible. So I think that's where it all came from, that desire to, I suppose, being from coming over to the UK and then being from being African or being black myself and not really, I saw that there were a lot of young people who needed someone to almost give them that voice to be heard or to, I felt growing up, the culture back then was very much about, you do what your parents want you to do, and no one really heard or listened to young people. And I went for a journey of a personal transformation myself where I started learning techniques of how to express who I really am and express my true voice. And I wanted that for young people. I wanted them to empower them to live the life that they truly love and the things that they truly want to do. And I suppose that's really what sparked that me to be someone who I didn't have a clue what I was even thinking about then. I just knew that I wanted to give young people a voice. One of the ways I thought that could be done is, taking them to see what goes on behind the scenes so that they can choose what they want to do rather than being told what to do. I think that came a lot from my own upbringing where I felt I never really thought I could actually express who I am or have my own voice. I had to conform out of fear and so on and so forth.
And I've found that growing up, I found what was important for me was the identification with people around me. So like my dad has always been a businessman, so he's always had his own business. So running my own business never seemed alien. Some people's parents work in the public sector, so running a business is alien because they don't have it around them. Whereas a lot of my family are in business, and so running and operating my own business seemed to be an almost given as opposed to I can't do that. And having people close to you that you identify with or look up to or aspire to be, I think if they're closer to you rather than sort of like an American on TV, but someone who's within your community or someone that you do know that you look up to, I think it's so important, especially for the younger generation. And I applaud you that you're putting the younger generation in front of the people that may inspire them to trigger something in them to say, actually, this is the path that I know is for me, even though nothing in their background identify, they might come from a broken background, they might be from a socioeconomic background that just says, I can't get into any of these buildings, I'm going to be a cleaner, or I'm just going to not have a job, etc. And this gives them, unlocks a part of their potential that says, actually, this is possible. And like you said earlier, I think there's so much more opportunity for that, and I'm so glad, because even like when I was growing up, there was very little opportunity in that. It was more, if you knew someone, it was fine, but if you didn't, then there was no way to unlock that. And with technology the way, and I think people as well, I think people now seem to be so much more open to helping, being more authentic, being more honest, and trying to say, we are here as one unit. I know there's a lot of segregation and a lot of work still needs to be done, but there seems to be so much more openness in terms of how can I be of service and how can I be of help, right? Now, if we take a step out of the professional head into your you as a person, what do you think inspires you most today?
Do you know what? That's a question I was actually thinking about, and it's difficult to pinpoint exactly, or maybe I have, maybe there's multiple things that inspires me. And from a personal standpoint, I'll say one thing that really inspires me is an idea of I want to see people, break free in being their true self. And what I mean by this is not a self that, again, this is my personal journey where I became aware of who I am through my desires and things that I desired in life I desired to live. But also at the time, I realized that a lot of it did not fit in within the social constructs in the environment. When I was in Nigeria, I didn't have anything about, being black. It was just more, I am Oris and I am Nigerian. And coming over to the UK, then you learn about, oh, you're black, you've got to act and behave this way. But when I went through this journey of like self-awareness, I realized that things that I like, that is that the freedom it gave me, just that freedom to actually, freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety, freedom from actually having a voice to say this is who I am. Not necessarily going out as a shout to say this is me, this is me, this is me. It's just more that internal to be able to express and go through things, just that tiny bit of courage. I suppose that's really what inspires me to say I want that for other people, so that to be the example and inspiration to say, oh, you can be your true self. You can actually do the things that, let's say you're black or Asian, people think that's not what Asian people do. But I want to give you that courage to say, no, you can actually, I can show you how you can do it. So that's really one of the things that inspires me to be that person that, to empower and lead people in that sense.
And what things do you still need to master, grow, or learn to become the next version of yourself?
I think at the moment it's just being more visible. So my thing is that, I'd rather just stay behind the scene and not step out. And over the last couple of years in particular, I've been working more on that. Hence what I said about, the intention to say, okay, I want to be more vulnerable with people. So hence this sort of opportunities has been coming up to actually get a platform to share who I am and be known. And that's something I've been working on in the last 2 to 3 years, being more visible, being more out there and standing up to say, okay, it's time to lead. I think, just that whole visibility and also it's more leading now. So putting myself at the forefront. Doesn't mean I need to be perfect to actually have it all mastered or figured out, but just, okay, I'm willing to lead. I'm willing to actually, that be it initiatives or programs, whatever that may be, and be more of a thought leader and actually share my thoughts more with people. So that's where I really see the next area of sort of mastery and development. And just being known. Well, not known to actually chase in that negative sense, is actually because I feel like the things I've gone through in life is there to can actually help a lot of people. So I've been afraid to actually step out of that. Yeah.
Because what I found is that the more you are aware of yourself, the more you authentic and vulnerable you become in terms of, I'm good at this. So it's not just saying, maybe I don't understand this, I'm not good at this or whatever, but it's the honest side of when you are good at something, being open and honest about that, to say, actually, I'm pretty good at this. The vulnerability and the authenticity combined, when your conversation is at that level with anyone, irrespective of age, irrespective of gender, socioeconomic background, professionalism, etc., and it's like, well, this is me, this is Oris, this is Bhavik, talking in front of you today. I found that people reciprocate that or mirror you the same way. So you see a lot more authenticity and a lot more vulnerability from them as well. And I like those conversations because we are all human, right? We are all here on this planet and we're all trying to figure it out. No matter what anyone thinks, everyone is here trying to figure it out, whatever it out is. And there is no destination, there's just a journey that we're all constantly on. And therefore, if we realize that, is why can't we look up and enjoy and smile and say, I have a direction, but I don't have an actual destination. Because as humans, even if we did have a destination, we know it's like, I want to climb that mountain, and you see the mountain and you start working towards it. Even before you get to the peak, you start looking at the next peak before you've even got to the one that you were aiming for, right? And that's what taught me that it's, don't worry about that peak. Just worry about every step that you go on and be the best you can, and not just for you, but for everyone around you, because they need to see your light shining bright. Because if you shine your light bright, they can shine their light bright for the people around them, right? And that's the world. That's the world I want to see, and that's what I want to create just by being myself. And if I can share, and if I can be honest, and if I can say, this is the vulnerabilities in my life, then you do suggest that these are the vulnerabilities in your life, and then we can have a real conversation. And especially as men, Oris, you know, I have a lot of people on this podcast which are female, and females seem to be a lot better at that in terms of, it's like my wife, she has a discussion every week, every day with someone in her circle, whether it be her sisters, whether that be her mom, whether it be close friends to her, and they just let off, you know, in terms of how things are getting on, what's good, what's not, etc. But as men, even though, you know, we have the intention, it just seems that we don't have enough of these conversations where we can have a men's circle where we say, you know, this is what I'm struggling with, or this is maybe an insight that I've had. What do you guys think? It's almost like we just sit in the dark and try and figure all this shit out ourselves. And how does that serve us? Because it's the same energy that created that shit that we're trying to solve it with. And it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah. No, exactly. And I can totally relate to that. I think again, that's another thing that really drives me, especially when it comes to men expressing who they truly are, being their true, authentic self. And this is how I see it. It's like, yes, I come in the male form, you know, but who I am, it's not the definition of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
You know, because I think this is probably where society, we're living in an exciting era where we're redefining life. What, you know, where it's like people are starting to bring out who they truly are beyond gender, beyond race, beyond, you know, all of these social constructs. So for me, I identified quite in my sort of early 20s that who I am, my behaviors and stuff is not necessarily conformed or limited to, oh, you're going to be a man. Like, for example, you're going to be interested in cars. I'm like, no. I was actually joking with a friend the other day. I find out when I sing along to like tracks and stuff, I know the female versions more than actually the men's version. I'm thinking, what's wrong? The old me in the past would have been like, oh, I've got to try be this way, I've got to try be that. I'm like, no, and so the reason why, again, bring out just to really be open is to also be an example to other guys to say, no, it's okay to also be yourself. It's nothing to do with sexuality or this or that. It's actually because for mental health's sake in itself, it's so needed. You know, just the mind or the soul does not know gender or race.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny you said about singing, because what happens to me when I sing is that I go high pitch.
Yeah,
so I
exactly.
sing high pitch, and then I catch myself, and then I try and deepen my voice.
Exactly. Well, that's crazy when you think about it. Like, it's mad. It is actually mad. Like, when you think about it, like, oh, this is wrong, or this is not a man, this is not how men should behave, this is how men should sing. Yeah, I get that's the whole thing about, what it means to be, I don't even get it. I think it's just crazy.
It's that mask of masculinity, isn't it? It's the mask we wear, or the hats we wear. And what I've realized, and I'm so glad that it's like coming, like my dad, even though he's a traditional Indian father in that respect, where he was the home, you know, like the earner. My mom was the homemaker, so my mom would be at home looking after us. My dad would have his own business, he'd go to work, etc. And you know, it was always like that. One thing is that he never thought in the traditional way. So, like, he wanted my sister to do really well, and the boys will be okay, they're fine. But he concentrated a lot on her, and even in social situations, he was like, even though there was politics with him and his brother, because he's the oldest and he had 4 younger brothers and sisters, etc., there would always be politics, as in they'd stop talking or they'd get on, etc. But he'd always say to us, when there was a birthday party or something, he goes, I'll drop you off to their house. I'm not going to come because there's issues, but you guys go, and I don't want this to affect any of the relationships you have with the rest of the family. And it's those kind of things that I admire. Because for someone, because my wife and her parents, when her parents had issues, the whole family was involved. We're not going to their house, and you're not going to know your cousins because of this political situation that's going on in the family. And I'm so proud of my dad that he allowed us to just be ourselves. And he always said, just do what makes you happy, and just try and be the best you can and just stay positive. And I know so many people don't have that. And hopefully with my son, so I have a son who's 10 years old and my daughter's 14 years old. And if I can just be an honest dad, because I don't want, again, I don't see myself as a dad, as in that traditional sense. Do you understand? I still like to go out and party, and I still like to go and play football on a Friday, and I still like to go on holiday with my friends, but then I like to spend time with my kids as well. Or then, I like going for a drink with my mates, but then I also like to sit at home and read a book or play chess with my son, and it's all these things. I don't want to be the stereotypical, I tell you, I learn so much from them. My son tells me certain things, I'm like, that's amazing for a 10-year-old. And that's the energy that I'm trying to give out.
Yeah.
Now, if we step this forward, Oris, let's fast forward 10 years time, okay? Oh no, let's fast forward 5 years. 10 years is quite a long time.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so I'm talking to you in present tense in 2026. And I say to you, Oris, we talked in 2021 and you said that the next 5 years is going to be amazing and certain things are going to happen and this is the way life is. Talk in present tense. For that to be true, for that to be amazing next 5 years, what would you be telling me in present tense in 2026?
Oh, what would I be telling you in present tense in 2026? That is I would say it's a scary question. I'm just thinking like, oh, how do I respond to that? Trying to think one. So what I'm saying in present tense 2026, is it like these are things this is now 2026?
Yes. Yep. And we've had and the last 5 years have been phenomenal based on like what's you even beyond what's possible for you and how you see your life has engineered by that time. What do you want to say this is what's happening right now?
Yeah. I think present tense 2026, I would say maybe just seeing a new world, a world where, for example, there's more people being more people actually being themselves now, having the courage to actually do the things that they really want to do, and life is not just all about work. People are like empowered, so. Like the power's always been given back to people to say, okay, now I get to determine my own life. I get to call the shots, not just, especially when it comes to employer and employees. I think sometimes the power still lies within the policies within the workplace. It's still very much in favor of the employer, where it doesn't actually allow the employee. This might sound a bit like, I don't know how to make come across people. I still think we still live under the slave trade framework today. The whole slavery, not slave trade, more of the slavery framework today, where people are there's the master and servant approach. I think that's the blueprint we still operate under today. Yes, things are not as barbaric as they were back then. I still believe that the blueprint is still identical in the sense that you don't get to determine your own time, how long you work for, how many hours, actually how much you earn. It's still dictated by. So I'd like to, in 5 years, I'd actually to say that narrative is changing slightly, where there's more of we're also a lot more collaborative, where we stop seeing ourselves as, you're it. Because I'm thinking the employer is also an employee, also just another human being. Stop talking in that terms of like, I hate the whole being professional thing, because I think it takes away who we really are as people. So I just people will just be more like, I'm Jamie, you're Mark. So rather than, I've got to be Mark, the HR manager, and I've got to think in that sense, no. I want to bring who Mark really is into that conversation. Let's be real with each other. To me, that's why I like to actually see the narrative changing more, being real with each other in the workplace and just be more normal. And I believe that would actually lead to having more of a more successful organizations, businesses growing, by just allowing people to just trust them a little bit to be more themselves and not dedicated to just 9 to 5. And I think this whole lockdown situation is like, it's almost like setting the pace for that. Yeah.
And it's interesting you said that, because when I started my own business, that was the sole reason that I left the organization so I graduated, so I did my degree, I did my master's, and then I went to London to work in an organization. And after 6 months, I said, I'm not doing this anymore,
Yeah.
purely because of that politics. And not it's how hard you work, it's who you know. And it's not how you are as a person, it's who you get on with. And I was like, I'm not playing this game. I don't want to play this game. I choose not to play this game. So then I left that and I set up a little shop in Leicester. And 20 years on, I've always had my own business. And I'm so happy because I always said, anyone who comes to work for me, because at one point I had 45 staff, and I said, anyone who works for me, I'm equal to them. And just because I'm in charge, I have to make certain decisions. I get that. But if they need me to go and post a letter because they need to go on with something, the way I see my role as a manager is that I shouldn't be making their job easier. That's my role, to augment their position so they can be the best who they can within their position, not to be a guy who sits at his desk and gives out orders and stuff like that. If my job is to keep thinking, how can I make their job easier so that they are more productive to be the best they can in that role?
Yeah.
And that's my job as a manager.
Yeah.
You know?
That's so go on.
No, go on, you go.
No, so that's so inspiring to hear. I think, even I would go as far as actually, if there's one word I would change within the workplace, I'd actually change the word from manager to leader. So I think that's a massive difference. I think we have managers who, for the management, because I did management at university.
Yeah, same mate.
That's so passionate. Oh, did you? Oh, cool. That's why I'm so passionate in this field. I'm thinking no, it should be, because management is about controlling, where it's actually stifling growth, creativity, productivity. Whereas if you have people who are leading by example, I think it's mainly leading on what type of behaviors you want to see in your employees and being the one actually lead on that part. Of course, people want to be successful. People want to actually thrive. People want to give. They want to give their gifts and talents to actually help, because it's a self-actualization. People want to really actualize who they really are. So unfortunately, the current system doesn't allow, things are changing, but I think it doesn't allow that fully to actually express themselves. And this is the role that I hope to actually put organizations to actually understand that, how to change that culture so they can actually go into the workplace, express themselves, because you have more of an engaged workforce, people looking forward to going into work because they know that they're going to fulfill who they truly are as an expression of their true self. And you're only going to have a successful company with profits, going off the roof. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And again, if we take off our work and professional hats, what does self-love mean to you?
Self-love. See, self-love is interesting. Something I've been thinking a lot more recently, because I find myself, my interpretation of love before growing up is actually, you just put other people first. You don't just serve. I think that came from my sort of religious background. Growing up in going to church, Christianity, and so on and so forth. You reading the Bible then with not much understanding. You just, it's all about, go and preach the gospel and, save people, to get them to heaven, and so on and so forth. That's the highest act of service to God. And I never really considered myself, my health, my well-being, any of that. And I think now, however, one thing that a massive shift I had is self-love is more or less inspiring people, but you're doing the things that you want to see people actually do. It's leading, and that's actually leading on the things you want to actually do, and not neglecting myself because I'm trying to help other people, but it's filling my cup first of all. And that's been a hard one. I'm like, am I being, so the thoughts of almost like feeling helpless, not helping people, just I'm actually focusing on filling my cup first of all. It's been it's been a real straight for me, because I'm thinking, am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something bad? Am I, there's always that question back in my mind. But I think this self-love is actually learning to fill my cup and almost get to a place where I'm like, you know what? I don't want to help anyone, but I'm choosing to help people.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing about saying what helped me a lot in that, because I come from a similar mindset to you in terms of we from a young age have always been taught, always be helpful, always try and help where you can and be helpful. But what I've learned is that only when you say no to others can you say yes to yourself. And only when you can say yes to yourself is when you can be the strongest version of yourself. So therefore, when you do help, you are going in with the full energy that you can, be of use. Because I know someone who's worn down mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually is useless, and that doesn't in the nicest sense of the word. Therefore, if I can then take it, it's like I've always said, I'm so busy working on myself that I don't even have time to look around really a lot of the time. So if someone does come to me for help, I'm not going to say no. All I'm going to say is yes, in my time, I will support and help, but in my time. And secondly, is that I know that I won't ever say, Oris, do you need help? Because all I'm doing is my head is down working on myself. But if Oris came to me and said, Bav, I need some help, I'm here. And I'll tell you, this is how we can help and this is how we can support. But a lot of the time also is I also have people around me that rely on that. And the best thing I can do is say no. Because how can you help someone help themselves if you keep helping them? And that's an identification as well that I've learned, that sometimes no is the best help you can give someone, because then they have to become resourceful in terms of working shit out. If it's crisis, that's different. But if it's just someone who's lazy, that just don't want to think for themselves, then no. I've learned that as well, and I think it's important.
And I think even with that, even in in a romantic context as well, I find myself literally dating people almost like with wanting to save them, like wanting to help them think that's the right thing to do, or feel like I just felt obliged I had to say yes to being in a relationship. Whereas the last generally, I don't think I struggled with that thinking like, I was like, oh, I can actually say no. I just want to, just date you. Don't want to take everything seriously. Just actually, let's just talk, and this is what I want, and not feeling the need to actually save. That's been a process for me the last few years when I'm like, no, this is what I want, and just like it's been so helpful. And I can also do that with, say, personal life as well. Because even one thing I've learned as well is I'm learning to now, another phase I'm going through right there, empowering people. So not feel like I've got to be the one to actually go and do it for them, but okay, how do I, so something that really shifts for me, I realized that I was using that whole thing about helping people. I was actually relying on their energy to survive rather than, relying on the source from within me.
Yeah.
And it was only when I discussed thinking, oh wow, so I had to learn to be self-reliant and managing my emotions, managing my feelings, managing all of that stuff, and not trying to take it out from another person. So it's been a something like self-love, whereby depending on the source within me, knowing that I have all the resources I need within me, and not being selfish to take it out of other people in the name of I'm trying to help them. And and how I do that on the day-to-day basis is, for example, say, I don't feel obliged to say I want to be in a relationship with this person. If you have issues, I literally I talk to myself and I say, no, Oris, you can see that person as a need, but it's not my place to help. No, I'm not going to help that person. I had to literally discipline myself to not give in to that urge to wanting to go and help or save, because I realized that I'm doing it for me, really, not for them. So that's the selfish approach. So like now the last few years as well, I've just been focusing on really pushing myself to eat the right food. So eating like healthy, organically, for example. Used to be so terrified to going into like places like Planet Organic, they're really healthy, expensive food shops. I'm thinking that's only for rich people and all of this stuff. But I've really trained myself to realize that that's for me as well. And
it's with nutrition especially. When people talk about expensive, okay, so organic, my wife is fitness and nutrition expert, so we've been on the importance of good food is key, underpinning to the foundation of how we live. Now, doesn't mean we can't have a pizza now and then,
Exactly.
But it just means that the 95% of the time we understand what the nutrition that's going into our body, because that's what's feeding our mind, that's what's feeding our body to be the strongest version, so we can be here for a long time and a useful time for that whole time, and it's the investment we make in ourselves. Because I see when people say, organic food is expensive, I say, compared to what though? Compared to your health bill when you're lying in a bed in 80 years old and you can't move, compared to that. And this is the difference in terms of the mindset. Even though financially we are okay now, it's not always been like that. We struggle at certain times, but one thing we've never struggled with is making that importance of the energy we put inside ourselves, because food is the fuel that feeds us, right? And the fuel that drives us and allows us to make decisions. And if we don't invest in see it as an investment in ourselves, then we're not seeing it in the right way, because it is an investment in to become the best version of ourselves. You know, we've got is the three foundations that I live by is eat well, move well, think well. Eat well, understand what you're putting in your body and do that. Move well, have movement as part of your life, whether that be running, whether that be meditation, whether that be qigong, whether it be tai chi, whether that be football, whatever it is. But you know, look after his body by movement. And third is think well. Think well means the conversations you have, the things you read, the things you watch, the things you listen to, the information. Get those three things right, and you've got a foundation for good life. And that's what I've had to learn over the last 10 years, because I was not in that place.
Absolutely. And if I could just add one thing to that as well, because I go back to what you said about self-love as well. And I've been working on, you know, there's a book I read. I want to say it's a practical. It's called I'm just my bookshelves over. That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm looking to my left. Yeah. So it's called the Mirror Work by Louise Hay.
Yeah.
And that book transformed my life in terms of how I see my self-image and the language I used to use myself. I think if you spoke to me maybe 10 years ago or maybe less, I would not be sat here talking about self-love, because that was what actually transformed my self-image. Even though it's still a work in progress, but I had such a negative self-image back then. The language I used towards myself was so negative, so devaluing. And I just thought that was the right thing to do. That's just the norm. So it was like through reading books like that, that's really helped me to start changing how I see myself, and even start saying to myself in the mirror that I love you. You're amazing. You're great. And I've invested a lot in terms of books to, do with like reprogramming my mindset, how I see myself. So that's really that's a build up from there, where now I discredited myself before to say, in terms of like certain types of food, it's only for rich people, it's only for certain people. And yes, because of upbringing and sort of exposure and so on and so forth, probably didn't thought that was not for me, that was too expensive. And I wish I could just do something to help other people understand that, to say, no, these things, there's no such thing as this is for rich people. But also it's a reflection of actually how we see ourselves as not being rich, and which I never would have seen as not loving myself before. But now I realize that was also an expression of not loving myself, not valuing who I am. And I've been working a lot more on that perception. And now some days I was just like, no, I've been investing a lot in terms of just what I listen to, what I read, and working on reprogramming my subconscious mind with new information. And a lot of who I am today has been as a result of that, almost like feeding myself with new information, working on the subconscious mind, literally daily from affirmation and visualization to create a new perception, and then start taking actions. Because again, I realize it takes a while for that to fully take roots in our soul, in our heart, before we start taking action. So there's been a lot of learning and unlearning over the years and recreating.
And I think the key word you used there was unlearning as well, because that's a huge process in itself, isn't it? Unlearning what's been maybe from a young age, or maybe our foundations, and then creating the new narrative for our lives and what's important to us. And then the next step would be, Oris, because I've been through that whole reprogramming stage. So reprogram in terms of visualization, meditation, affirmations, all these things. And what I found was the next stage to that, once it becomes the norm, once it seems like the programming, it's like, when you train and it becomes normal, once it's become normal and all it beds into the mind, it's that unwavered knowing. You just know. You just value yourself to a high regard, that you're not willing to let anything in that's going to, demoralize that in any way. And I think that's the stage which, once I reach that, I know that my opinion of myself is higher than anyone's opinion of me. And that's how I know my life will be always good. And it took work. It takes work. And then I'm not willing to allow substandard into my life. And what that means, not just substandard as in the quality of things, but the quality of the people, quality of the conversations, quality of the things I buy, the things I surround myself with, the things I put in myself, the way I spend my time. Everything has to align because I'm worth it, because I know I'm worth it, you know? That's the important thing in terms of the way I see life now. And then when I'm coming off that, having conversations with people like you, Oris, because I see that these kind of conversations light me up, they spark me up, because I like to hear people on a similar journey ahead of me, near me, because this is what keeps us going to say, we're not on our own. We're not on our own. We just don't have our network might not be wide enough, but there are journey, do you understand?
Absolutely.
That's why I wanted to air this conversation. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lighten the mood a little bit here. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna do a quick 10-fire questions for you, right? So the 10-fire questions are basically random questions that I just don't want you to think about. I just want you to fire off an answer, have a thought, and then fire it off, all right? And sometimes it's not the right answer, sometimes it's just a bit of fun, right? Just a bit of fun, that's all it is, right? So I'm gonna pick out a couple of questions. I've got listed. I'm gonna just pull off top head, and then we're gonna go from there, okay? So let's go. What's your favorite summer activity?
Oh, cycling, I'll probably say.
Cycling? Oh, perfect. We can talk a lot about that. What's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh, the strangest thing I've ever eaten. Okay, I've eaten like dog, cats, and people look at me thinking like, what on earth? Yeah. To me, that's a strange one. To others, it might be strange. I say kangaroo is probably the strangest for me because I never thought I'd eat that.
Yeah. Mine was zebra and snake. So
okay.
When I dance, I look like
A madman. I literally go wake up the following morning thinking like, dude, what were you doing? I just lose it. And then I'm walking with this embarrassment and following it thinking like, dude, yeah, I just go for it, basically. I'm like the center of the dance floor.
If you could get a yacht, what would you call it?
Oh, if I get a yacht, what would I call it? I don't know. I mean, my nickname is Giddis growing up, Giddis. I'll probably just call it that just for, childhood memories.
Yeah.
And I spent my whole summer in the south of France.
If you could be invisible for a day, what would you do?
Sleep.
You can do that anyway.
Yeah, no, literally just sleep all day, just don't talk to anyone. Or maybe go to banks and actually just steal lots of money.
Okay. If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Oh, what about what superpower be? I'd probably say just flying, be able to just get to places instantly.
Teleportation.
Yeah. Travel the world.
If you had access to a time machine, where would you go and why?
As in what era or what? Just location?
Yeah, anyway, time machine as in past, future, whatever.
Past, future. I'll probably go back to my childhood to actually see what it was like because I don't have much memories of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. If you had a fortune cookie, what fortune would you want it to say?
What fortune I wanted to say? I'm not so good at fortune cookies, to be honest. What do they normally have? What do they normally say?
It just says things like, oh, you will be this, or you will do this, or, like something is happening. It's like a star sign. If ever a star it's going to happen. Something.
Okay, I probably have a beautiful house on the beach somewhere.
Okay. And if you could
not have to work for the rest of my life is probably what I wanted to say.
Yeah, but if you give, but don't see it as that. See it as I want to give service in the way I want to give service all my life. Because I think we as human beings give service, don't we?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I like how you put it.
And if you could write a book about your life, what would you call it?
Oh. Probably just Oris.
It's funny, so many people have said that same thing.
Oh, really?
It's the unique individual fingerprint of your DNA, right?
Yeah.
There you go. So that was a quick 10 question just to lighten the mood a little bit. There you go. And it's funny because we don't think about these things very often. We might have had a fleeting chance, but when you actually have to think about it, it's like a bit hard.
I know, right? I know.
So just at this juncture, Oris, I'd just like to thank you, acknowledge you for turning up the way you have, the honesty we've had in our conversation, and the things that you're trying to do and make a difference within the world. So thank you. So just a couple of more questions that just tap into a little deeper level of your thinking, so we just get to understand a little bit more about you. Now, if we fast forward 100 years into the future, you're in the last moments of your life. You don't have enough energy to speak, but you have enough energy to write down 3 words. Now, these 3 words have helped you all your life. They've resonated with you, and you hope by sharing them, they can help the people that are listening. What would those 3 words be for you?
Oh, can I add one extra word to it?
You can. Well, they don't have to be 3 words together. They can be even individual words.
Okay, well, just be real with yourself.
Yeah.
That's open up so much. That like self-awareness from you. Just be real with yourself. Don't lie to yourself, is what I'd say.
Be truthful to yourself. Yeah. Because once you're that, then nothing can really tap into that, right?
It opens up so much.
Yeah. And this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle. And right now you're bigger than the world. So I've connected you to 7.58 billion people on this planet. They're all connected. They can all hear you. There's no language barrier. They're all conscious and they're all awake and they're all listening to what you've got to say. If I give you this mic for the next 30 seconds, what would your message be to the world?
Oh. Just have the courage. Have the courage to pursue your ideas. Have the courage to be yourself. Have the courage to speak up, to push yourself beyond your comfort zone. And because the life, although sometimes things seem a bit scary in that initial stage, but once you take that step, realize that it's not as bad as it actually seemed. And I think that's been one of the biggest lessons for me. Just we learn how to. Before I learned how to drive, I didn't know then I had the ability to drive, because often people were like, oh no, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't drive. But no, you had the ability to be able to walk before you even learn how to walk. So all our abilities is within us. So it's just be willing to take those steps, and you get to realize them. So just have the courage to push yourself.
Yes. And it's true, because it's that thing where motion creates motion, isn't it? It's only when you start moving in a certain direction. And also, most things are just a series of lots of little things, and it's just master each little thing, and you can generally do a big thing. So thank you so much, Oris. Now, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say?
What about the best thing I like to say? Other than mainly, just thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been really fun. I really enjoyed it. And also thank you to people who are listening as well. And one thing I'd say is, just something you said at the beginning of our conversation, and you just want to live life the way you see it. And that's one thing I would highly, highly, encourage you to do, because, it's not as scary. In that initial stage, it might seem scary, but I'd say just have the courage to live life the way you truly see it and be who you truly are. That's one thing I would definitely say. Be your true self. Write your own story.
But exactly, that's it. I encourage everyone to do that. Just don't live by other people's standards. Don't live by other people's wants of you. Live by your wants of yourself.
Yeah, and just one thing I'd say, dream, allow yourself to be connected to your true desires. The one thing I've learned is that literally those opportunities will show up. It's the law of the universe. I've learned more about the law of how it works and so on. But I set the intention that I actually want to feature more on podcasts and talks and so on and so forth. I didn't know how it's going to happen. Lo and behold, this is all showing up. So connected to your desires.
And I think we can be our own worst enemy in terms of getting in our own way. But if we just let things happen, if we just keep doing the work, so if we just keep turning up in the world the best way we can, the path sometimes will always light itself the way we're best meant to feel and go. And I think the older we get, the more we realize that life is just a learning journey the whole time. We're just learning. There's no decision that's ever a wrong decision. It's either you win or you learn. And they're the only two outcomes to every decision that you make. And when you realize that, you need to make certain decisions to learn certain things. And some people say that's a wrong decision. But I've always said you won't know you didn't need to do that until you do it to say, no, that I don't want to do it. Do you understand? Yeah. So thank you again so much, Oris. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I know you're a busy man, and I know the energy you're putting into the cause that you're working with, please stick at that, and then just come out into the world and be more honest, reach out to more people, network with more people, and try and share your message as well, because I love the energy that you bring in. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Now, I'm Bhavik and I'm your host of Bigger Than the Hustle, and a few thoughts to leave you with before I go. Big energy leads to big thoughts lead to big ideas, big ideas lead to big actions, and big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week, goodbye.
And look after the people around you, because they make you you. And you are not you without those people.